Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute.
What can you experience in secret? Inspiration. Great.
Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, good morning, guys. Boy, I cut it close today. I couldn't find a parking place downtown. I squeezed into something. When I do something like that in one move, I get so upset that nobody saw me do it. You cannot imagine. Between two big SUV things where you can't, and I have a little car, and there's not an inch between the bumpers on either side. And I did it, I don't know how, in one svelte move. Svelte? In one, svelte isn't right, in one swell. What?
No,
fell swoop?
That's what
I always say swell foop. In one swell foop, I did it. Well, guys, we had suggested that maybe Potter would be here because we weren't all together here on Wednesday, but Potter, being the editor of an alternative weekly newspaper in a major American city, has a great deal of responsibility with it, and as it turns out, Mr. Potter cannot take any time away from his busy duties to spend them anytime with, with us. I remain less than 100%, and hope you stick with me here. I just don't feel like, my head feels like it's full of cotton batten. Cotton batten. What's cotton batten? You never heard of that, huh? I think cotton batten is like what cotton balls are made out of. Only I think I might be making all of this up. I don't know. At any rate, if you're a baseball fan and if you're a Pirate fan, these are such incredible games these guys are playing. Please, just indulge me for 1 second. 2 in a row that have been scoreless into extra innings, and we win by 1 run in the 11th. Now, for some people, that's not a fun game because there's not a lot of hitting. But these pitching duels that have been going on between Detroit and us have just been amazing baseball, especially since, of course, we win at the end. And a big series coming up with the Reds, who we surpassed last night. We have the second best record in all of Major League Baseball, bested only by the team directly in front of us, St. Louis Cardinals. Amazing. It's amazing. Check out the box scores and just look down and see if you can get any with the numbers we've got. You won't find any except one St. Louis, and we're only 2 games behind them. Jeez. I'm telling you, this team is real. It's wonderful. And then, of course, we have the Stanley Cup looking very possible, down to 4 teams, all of them previous winners. I think they are the teams that are left are the last 4 winners, right? Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a heck of a series. And that's all very exciting stuff if you like sports. And I do. Okay. So it's just you and me, and I hope that's okay with you. I hope the lack of Potter sitting right here does not compel you to exasperatedly tune me, just little old me, out. Tell me if it's... I can't be wrong about this, right? Hang on. I haven't told you what I'm talking about. Front page, USA Today. Today, the lead story is called Pollen Plague. Well, let me tell you, Jess and I are both, besides our myriad stomach issues, we're both dying of hay fever and other allergies. And it is a plague. And the article is about how climate change, oh, God, is behind it. And how somehow when there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the more plants grow, and the more pollen then they produce. So pollen, for those of us who are allergic to it, is a real scourge. And apparently they feel that like every year is going to be, in all likelihood, worse. It seems to me for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been seeing headlines saying, worst pollen season on record. Every year surpasses the previous year. So for those of us who suffer from these seasonal allergies, this is not good news. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the first sentence of the story. Tell me if something strikes you. From the roof of the Gottlieb Memorial Hospital in the Chicago suburbs, an 83-year-old retired doctor finds troubling evidence of why so many people are sneezing and itching their eyes. Did you hear anything there that was odd? Jess? Were you listening?
Yes.
I'm going to do it one more time, quickly. From the rooftop of the Gottlieb Memorial Hospital in the Chicago suburbs, an 83-year-old retired doctor finds troubling evidence of why so many people are sneezing and itching their eyes. Jess finds nothing. I was taken up short by something there in the last part of that sentence, which I think is a childlike mistake of...
Itching?
Yes, of definition.
Yeah. Now that I think...
Why so many people are sneezing and itching their eyes?
Right.
Excuse me? You don't itch your eyes.
Right.
You scratch your eyes if they itch.
Yeah.
How does that get past a copyright? Who said that? That's a 4-year-old mistake.
Yeah. Front page.
That is like such a glaring error of meaning. You don't itch your eyes. You don't itch your skin. You don't itch. You scratch because it itches. It's a cause, not the effect. Itching their eyes. Wow. I tell you, my faith in the quality of American journalism is really... And speaking of that, I read the other day, the Chicago Sun-Times, major newspaper in a major city, has just laid off its entire photography staff. This is a newspaper which I think consists of 3 main things. And those would be written stories by reporters, pictures by the photographers, and advertising. That's a newspaper to me. How the hell do you lay off your entire photography staff? And you know what they're going... They'll just have reporter. They're going to have... So you're a reporter. They'll have them, taking little pictures on their iPhones. I guess this is the way it's going to be. Itching their eyes. Oh, dear Lord. Oh, I fear for the future. Increased pollen and increased stupidity and illiteracy. What are we coming to? Okay, I have an explanation for you. Not about that, but about a little item that came up the day after the election. So that put it back about, 2 weeks ago? Is it 2 weeks ago? 1 week ago. 1 week ago. Week and a day or two. I was looking at the fine print at all the little county races and who won where and what, and I was taken by the fact that in Trafford, I believe, was it Trafford and Norwin? Trafford and Penn-Trafford and Norwin. That there was an election, I'm not quite sure for what, a local election. There were 6 people running, and there were 3 people who voted. 3! And I couldn't. I mean, I know voter turnout is disappointing these days, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out what the heck that could be about. Well, thanks to you guys are always ahead of me, I received a number of explanations, all of which were in agreement, largely, and about what that was about. And here is the one that is most, I guess, maybe more information than you want to hear. But this is the reason. It was what I told you, while factually correct, was simply a reading of the votes in Allegheny County that had been cast. And as I believe a caller or an emailer last week said, I think those cities are like partially in Allegheny, but mostly in Westmoreland, and consequently, you are probably just looking at the few votes that were from people that live on the Allegheny side. Well, turns out that there's some truth in that. Okay, so here's the longest explanation with all kinds of material that maybe you didn't want to know, but you might find of interest. I have lived in the Penn-Trafford School District basically my entire life, and this is why you saw the results you spoke of. A very tiny portion of Trafford Borough is on the west side of Turtle Creek. I know how you say it around here. Turtle Creek, the body of water, not the town. So part of Trafford is on the west side of Turtle Creek, which is the dividing line for Allegheny and Westmoreland counties in this area. And consequently, that little tiny portion of Trafford Borough on the wrong side of the creek ends up in Allegheny County. And the writer goes on to say, I suppose that since these few row houses that have been there for a long time were so far isolated from the school systems in Monroeville, which going back into the 1940s was basically farmland, it was a way more logical thing to have those kids on the wrong side of the creek go to what was then the Trafford schools, merged into the Penn-Trafford district in the 60s. I would guess, so we're just talking about a few little townhouses that are on the wrong side. I would guess, says he, that there are only 10 to 14 apartments total, and not all are occupied that we're talking about. So vote totals of 0 for this type of election is really no big surprise. If you look at the results for Westmoreland County, you will see much different numbers for the races that you mentioned. I voted here in Penn Township, Precinct 5, and I know the race for school director was an active one, blah, 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 blah. You can actually,
you can actually see the part of Trafford I am referring to if you have seen the movie Kingpin. What? Kingpin. Now, wasn't that about Huey Long? They filmed that. That's would have put the movie in Louisiana. They filmed that. Is Kingpin about Huey Long? Why would they film that here? The main character, Roy Munson, played by Woody Harrelson, lives in one of these row houses on the wrong side of the creek. And the movie shows scenes outside the row houses, and a shot of downtown Trafford is seen from the Allegheny County side of the bridge. The director's cut version also shows a scene from inside the 7-Eleven at the Westmoreland side of the bridge. Oh, be still my heart. As for Norwin, there's a similar situation, blah, blah, blah. This is more than you want to know. So anyway, this would explain all these vote totals. The Norwin School District is very large, covers an area where there are thousands of voters. 99.9% of them are in Westmoreland County, and only a few, actually 3 voters on the wrong side of the creek live in Allegheny County who voted. Okay. So that's that. Did you come up with what the movie Kingpin was about? Okay. Because now I'm wondering about that. Okay, so that's that, if any of you cared. But I don't like leaving, because I left an incorrect well, I was factually correct, but I was incorrect in not knowing that that was... Kingpin is about a what?
A fictional bowler.
A fictional bowler?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not about Huey Long. It's about a bowler?
Oh, yeah.
Caller, hello.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just want to change the subject real quick.
Oh, to something
I'm
depressing.
watching TV, and I see small businesses. We're going to cut the taxes of small businesses in the state of New York. Bloom, whatever the hell the guy's name is. What about the residents' property taxes? When do they get the break? And another thing about small businesses, they got small minds. Because I'll tell you this, those small businesses cry every day about their taxes. They can't pay unemployment. They can't pay SSI. They don't even want to pay they don't want to even pay the taxes out. They cheat like hell. I know of people who are local tax people, they're contractors out there, saying they only made $5,000 a year. So this bullshit, if those people are pounded down, they're not. Those people have been cheating the system for years and years. There's such a thing as called cash jobs. When you pay with cash, you have no tracing it back. These people cheat, and lie. That's why the Republicans like them, I think, so much. But I'm not saying about all the small businesses, but a big percentage of them are like that. And if a government wants to get revenue, they need to investigate these bastards because they're cheating like hell.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like he knows of what he speaks. He knows some small businessman that's cheating. Well, I suppose if you're dealing in cash, it's pretty darn easy to cheat. The wealthier you are, the easier it is to cheat. And first of all, you can hire these tax attorneys who play every loophole. Also, the tax law is written for rich people to avoid paying their fair share. That's the way that works. That's just the way it is. I was sitting in my backyard yesterday afternoon, and I started thinking about the inequality of life and of the world. And sometimes when I think about it, my head wants to explode. I can't stand it. And I don't know why it's tolerated. I was thinking mostly about education. I was, at my son's insistence, I've been watching the entire. God, what is wrong with my head? I'm taking this medication, and it says it might make you drowsy. Well, I think it's just made me stupid. Anyway, I've been watching The Wire, which was on television, I'm not sure when, but I think it ended like in 2006 or 7, maybe. I don't know. There's 4 or 5 seasons. I'm on season 4. It's based in Baltimore. It is brilliant, brilliant, beyond brilliant, brilliant. My brother compares it to Shakespeare. And actually, I've seen other people say essentially the same thing. It's that brilliant. It's difficult, but brilliant. And in season 4, they focus quite a bit on the Baltimore public school system. And so I had been watching, I guess that is why I was starting to think about it, watching what passes for public education in these poorer areas like the inner city of Baltimore that we as a society have simply written off. How we've just essentially, with malice aforethought, condemned millions of American children to live in hellish circumstances and to, on a daily basis, sort of perform a cynical exercise of being schooled, when in fact they're not being schooled at all. And The Wire really takes you behind the scenes of what happens in these kinds of districts. How the teaching to the test to pass No Child Left Behind standards is what goes on at the expense of any real education, of how children are passed through from grade to grade, even when they have not mastered anything in the grade that they were in before or the year before that. And again, condemning them to a life of poverty. And we tolerate this. And we refuse to deal with the fact that if you're by accident of birth born to people who have the money to live in a certain kind of place, that you then get a really good education on the taxpayer's dime. And if you live in a place where poorer people congregate, because that's the only place they can live, they lack private transportation. They rely on public transportation. And they go to schools, taxpayer supported, that do not have the resources, to educate them. And we continue to flood the richer districts with money and starve the ones that are already starving. And I think a society that does that is immoral. I think a society that does that is contemptible. And that is us. That is we. We are contemptible. We don't care about those kids that go to school in Wilkinsburg. If we did, we'd do something about it. Many coming from homes in which they get little enrichment, if anything, where a school could in fact be a haven and an opportunity, and it's nothing but a holding pen. And this, from city to city to city. And you look at our governor, and he pulls money away from them. And he pulls money away from all of the programs that could benefit them. Because they didn't vote for him. And anyway, he belongs to a party that does nothing but take care of the haves. If the have-nots want any chance, that's the Democrats that might deal with them. Might. A little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. So I started thinking about it, and I really, my head wants to explode. I feel like a child who has just sort of seen something in the world that they didn't know existed and runs to a parent to say, Mommy, Daddy, why is fill in the blanks? And that's the way I feel now. And I'm not a child. And until the day I die, I will have that same feeling of why? What is wrong with us? Contemptible. All of us. Because it's tolerated. It's not the major issue ever. Ever! The impact of our tolerance of this inequality and immorality is huge. And we deal with that by imprisoning all of the students that we didn't educate. So we keep them in holding pens, don't educate them, let them go out, and then we imprison them, essentially. They're imprisoned from the day they are born. And we don't give a shit. Okay, I'll stop. I wasn't even expecting to do that. I don't know what happened to me. Joseph writes, you went off the air after 14 minutes yesterday and never came back on. What happened?
Yes, you did.
Excuse me?
Yes, you did. That's the problem that we had, but we fixed it.
I did come back on? Mm-hmm. You mean I was off the air for 14 minutes?
Yes.
I was?
Not audio, just video. And it probably wasn't
Oh, nobody tells me.
Well, that's why Carlo was down here.
Well, I thought he was just down here so Tom Sokolowski could, lose his mind. Did you see Tom look at him?
Oh, yeah.
Tom was like, he was taught motor mouth. And then, whoa! Yeah, Carlo is seriously gorgeous.
True story.
God. Okay. Yes, David, about Kingpin. Kingpin is not about Huey Long. Yes. We know. It's a movie about bowling. Man, that sounds like a hell of a film. A movie about bowling. Maybe it is. I don't know. Harrelson is a good actor. Okay, I'll stop. Here a few little items that you might have missed because they were not covered in the... Oh, my God! Have I not taken a break? Mm-mm. Okay. Sorry. When I start ranting, I lose track of time. Let's take a break, come back, and I'll do these few little items you might have missed because, in large part, they were never reported in any news outlet that you accessed. Really. In just a bit.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Do you know this haunting Beethoven masterpiece? That Tolstoy felt turns man to a base animal? Join me, Martin Giles, for Pict's production of the Kreutzer Sonata by Nancy Harris, based on Tolstoy's scandalous novella. I promise it'll be a thrilling train ride that will forever change the way you hear music. Visit picttheater.org for tickets and information.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, great deals on Go 8 vouchers, Sauce and Saga. Supplies are limited. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. Bergbargains.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All righty, we are back. And granted, these are not necessarily happy stories. I'll do them relatively quickly. A 2-year-old boy in Texas is dead after he shot himself in the face with a 9mm handgun that he found available to him at his great-grandparents' home in Cherokee County, Texas. Both great-grandparents were at home when the shooting took place. The 2-year-old, Trenton Mathis, and his 3 siblings were removed from their parents' home last year by Children's and Youth Services due to abuse and neglect, and these poor dear children were then transferred to a home of the people who, I guess, taught their grandparents and parents how to be such wonderful parents as well. And this 2-year-old is now dead. 2-year-old shooting himself in the face. He is dead. All right, last Sunday, 15-year-old sailor Sloan Martine died after she was shot in the head with a semi-automatic handgun that belonged to her parents. This happened in Oklahoma. This is reported in the Oklahoma Daily News. Martine's mother had recently purchased the handgun for personal protection. Martine, who was 15, and her 12-year-old sister had been handling the gun when they laid it down and it suddenly discharged, according to police reports. The number of children that die in this way is staggering. And these nobody compile. Here again, the National Rifle Association has made it nearly impossible for statistics to be compiled about gun death and broken down into categories. If we were to know how many children died because a firearm was available to them, loaded and ready to go in the home they lived in, and in every case, these guns are there to safeguard the family. Children die, and these are always called accidental shootings. They're not accidental. Is the very definition of criminal negligence. Children die in accidental shootings because fools who happen to be their parents buy guns because they feel insecure, and they live in a culture in which that is a reasonable thing to do. It is, in fact, considered an absolutely intelligent thing to do by a huge number of Americans. And the culture also is so offhanded about the right to have guns in your home that a lot of people have a rather, shall we say, cavalier attitude toward them. Guns don't kill people, right? I've grown up hearing that.
Guns don't kill people. And that kind of thing gets in your head. So a gun is your friend. A gun is your family's friend. A gun is something that's going to save you, not kill you or your children. And we buy into this, and we're lulled into a sense of now security because we have a gun in the house. And because we're fools, we don't educate ourselves about gun safety, nor are we required to. You can't just start driving a car. You got to learn how to drive the car. Then you have to prove to the state that you know how to drive a car. And the state has to, in fact, sign off on the fact that you know how to drive a car. Because a car can be a lethal weapon. Now, when it comes, of course, to a gun, which we know can be a lethal weapon, no such formalities required. You want a gun? Go get a gun. Oh, you might have to stand around waiting for a while there's a background check. Or not. There's no requirement to learn how to use the gun. There's no requirement to know how to safeguard others in the home. So, you would think that a state government that is functional would have a law on the books that addresses this issue. You would think. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, Lynn, it's Mike from D.C.
Hi.
This sounds really cruel, but when I hear these stories about 2-year-olds and whatever killing themselves, part of me thinks it's Darwinian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're stupid enough to have a gun in your house, maybe nature is taking care that you don't reproduce. And it's terrible for those kids and terrible for the people, but if only the dumb people have guns, isn't that Darwinian?
Well, I would argue, you would agree that some intelligent people do have guns, but my guess is intelligent people have guns and they are responsible with them.
Or you don't let your kid in the house. My next-door neighbors growing up had guns. Mm-hmm. And my mother said, you were never allowed in that house. If I catch you in that house, you're going to get punished. I'm like, why? My mother said, because they have guns. We won't touch them. You're not allowed in that house. And that was 30 years ago.
Well, heck, if you were a kid in certain communities and you weren't allowed in houses that had guns, you wouldn't have had a friend. Jeez.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if your mom didn't want you around guns and she sent you to school and there's armed guards all over the place and the teachers are packing, my God. Well, your mom, God bless her, really old-fashioned. I hear what you're saying, and it does sound cruel.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, bye. But why shouldn't there be laws about if you have a gun and a child gets hold of that gun and harms themselves, that you are liable, criminally liable? The Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence says there are 27 states, plus Washington, D.C., where the caller was just calling from, that do have child access prevention laws on the books, although those laws are all very, very different. And some, such as, believe it or not, Oklahoma has such a law. It does have a law. But they would not apply in most cases in which kids actually end up killing themselves with the guns. Because in Oklahoma, a parent can only be held liable for allowing children access to guns when they do so knowing that it is likely that their children will use those guns to commit a crime. That's what counts as a... What? What? Of course, that is ludicrous. I do not know if Pennsylvania has such a law. I do not know. But you cannot, if you troll around and access media, you cannot go a day without coming upon a story like this. So, there has been an effort by some news organizations to attempt to compile a running tally of gun death. And to do so by keeping their eyes out on, crime reports from all the counties and cities of the country and scouring through every newspaper in the country, because a gun death in this country is no big deal. It happens so often that they're often not particularly reported except very locally reported. So, according to some of the people that are attempting to catalog just how bad it is, and they've been doing it with renewed vigor since the Sandy Hook massacre. The number of gun deaths, and this is probably an underreport, the number of gun deaths in the United States since Newtown, since Sandy Hook, has now exceeded the number of American soldiers killed in the Iraq War. And it took 10 years to reach that number of 4,409 soldiers killed. Now, admittedly, this country did not pay much attention to that either. But we are talking since Sandy Hook, which, I'll remind you, occurred December 14th. So we're talking about a little less than 6 months' time. More Americans have died at the hands of a gun than were killed in 10 years of war in Iraq. The number is 4,499. And it is expected that that number is, as I said, incomplete. Despicable. Okay. So, you know what? I was remiss in, I'm going to get this last break in on time. Then I want to come back and talk about another gun death. This one I referred to yesterday. This is the gun death at the hands of the FBI of a Chechen who had known and befriended one of the Tsarnaev brothers, the older, and he was being interrogated in his own apartment by the FBI and the state police of Massachusetts and a few other law enforcement types, and he's dead. Reportedly 7 gunshot wounds, 1 to his head, and he was unarmed. And the reports that have been coming out from the FBI and unnamed sources and anonymous this and that has literally changed every day sometimes more than once in a day, of how the hell this particular gun death happened. I'm going to give you the latest information. It's astounding. After this.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
It's warming up outside, so get to Little's for all your spring needs. Little's has everything for men, women, and children to stay in style for this upcoming hot summer. Lots of great colors from Dansko, New Balance, Steve Madden, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for an interview with Bill Peduto, plus Weird Al Yankovic, Pitbull, Kesha, Kendrick Lamar, and Brad Paisley. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
So when you get to the corner of Smith and Orchard, you're going to want to take a left.
You are not going to.
Then what you're going to do is turn onto Marcy
and Brett
Avenue.
just broke up
and go past the first
apparently
3
she's
lights
happy
and then
about
take
it.
the next left.
I don't really
then drive
think
5
she's
more
happy,
blocks
but
and you should be
who
there.
am I to judge, right?
Park on the right.
That's
I'll
what
see
I
you
heard
later
last
tonight.
night.
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, and just a quick aside, email from Chuck. Lynn, regarding your rant about poverty and education, last night Diane Sawyer revisited a school in Philadelphia, Strawberry Mansion. Sounds wonderful. Strawberry Mansion High School. And it was described as one of the most dangerous schools in the country. After she highlighted the tremendous challenges and efforts to resolve those challenges, she focused on a few students who were able to rise above the violence and distractions and consequently gain acceptance to college. But then they were faced with a new challenge, and that challenge was simply that they did not have the $500 entrance fee that was required. Chuck writes, I sincerely hope that Governor Corbett saw the story. Makes you think twice about not taxing an industry like fracking. Yeah. Okay, so I am appalled by this FBI shooting. This guy might have been a bad guy, and apparently the FBI is saying that he had confessed to them that he was behind a triple murder in Waltham, Massachusetts in 2011 and had implicated the alleged Boston bombers in it as well. Of course, we have to take their word for that, and their word is a little hard to take when you see what has been said about how this man that they were interrogating ended up dead. This happened in Orlando, Florida, last week. And the man in question is a Chechen, Ibrahim Todashev. And they were interviewing him for the third time in his apartment. The date, May 26th. And people have started compiling all of the news accounts of this and what different reporters were told about what happened inside of that apartment. And it's almost laughable, but of course it's not laughable because the end result is someone is dead, and we know it is at the hand of our crack Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, I don't know about you, but I do have this sense that the FBI knows what it's doing. How am I capable of still being naive? Anyway, about 3 days after the death, the Boston Globe reported that the dead man was, quote, shot in the kitchen of his apartment after overturning a table and attacking the agent with a knife. A number of other news organizations said that he was killed after he lunged for the officer's gun. Others said he went after a samurai sword, which was in the living room in a corner where he lived in the apartment. Now, the latest thing we seem to be hearing is that he leapt across the kitchen table and turned the table over on the FBI guy, who then, thinking he was about to die from this unarmed man, shot him 7 times. There was another, this is the latest story, there was another officer in the kitchen who I guess stood there and watched, didn't do a thing. So, all of a sudden, in reports about this knife-wielding, sword-wielding guy, we learn that he had a serious knee injury, which probably would prevent him from leaping over any tables anyway. And the knife that we heard about from many anonymous FBI sources never existed. In fact, the FBI now says that he was unarmed. Officials initially told ABC News and others that a knife was involved, that a samurai sword was in the room. Other officials speaking on conditions of anonymity said that he lunged at the agent, but did not have a gun or a knife or a sword. An official said that according to one account, pick your account, by the way, of the shooting, the other law enforcement officials had, in fact, just stepped out of the room. So the FBI agent was alone with this marauding, unarmed man. What happened to the other agent, who now we're told was also in the kitchen and did not draw his weapon, I don't know. Because one story says everybody was out. The others say there were 6 or 7 officers there. Others say there were 2 officers there. And it is no wonder that there are calls for all kinds of independent investigation. I will give you the New York Times story on this today. And yes, it has changed again. This is unbelievable. Here's today's report. A man who was killed in Orlando, Florida last week while being questioned by the FBI about his relationship with Tamerlan Tsarnaev, one of the Boston Marathon bombing suspects, had knocked the agent to the ground with a table and ran at him with a metal pole before being shot, according to a senior law enforcement official who has been briefed in the matter. Okay, so this is amazing. Now, I suppose tomorrow we will read that he attempted to strangle the agent with a bungee cord that he had up his sleeve. The weapon has then been a knife, a sword, no weapon, and now we're back to a weapon, which is a pipe. Metal pole. A metal pole. The New York Times account says that this happened in the kitchen and that the FBI agent who was from Boston and 2 detectives from the Massachusetts State Police. Okay, so the New York Times now has 3 people in the kitchen with this now deceased man. Here's what they're saying now. Mr. Todashev, according to the FBI, and again, I say, according to the FBI now, has absolutely no credibility at all. How do you have a credible account of this when, as I said, it laughably has changed 4 or 5 times and continues to? According to the FBI, this guy had confessed to his involvement in the deaths, these 3 deaths over a drug deal in Massachusetts, and he implicated the elder Tsarnaev. He then started to write a statement admitting his involvement while sitting at a table across from the agent. And then one of the detectives, remember there's 2 other detectives there, one of them looked away. And at that moment, the guy picks up the table and throws it at the agent, knocking him to the ground. Okay, fine. So then we got him knocking a guy to the ground, if this is true. But we also have 2 other Massachusetts state troopers in the room, according to the latest FBI. So you got 3 guys on 1. While trying to stand up, it says, the FBI agent, who suffered a wound to his face from the table, drew his gun, saw Todashev running at him with a metal pole, although he said it might have been a broomstick. All right. Fearing for his life, he shoots 7 times. The detective in the room did not fire a weapon. This is the latest story. I don't know about you, but this story suggests extraordinary incompetence. Or a cover-up of some sort. Or an extraordinary incompetent cover-up of incompetence. Here's how, and I'm not sure who wrote this, in The Atlantic sums it up. It is difficult to understand how, having shot the man dead, the multiple law enforcement personnel on the scene could have gotten the details totally wrong. The room was full, the room was not. It was the living room, it was the kitchen. It was a sword, he was unarmed. It was a knife, it was a pole. It was a broomstick, it was a this, it was a that. The Atlantic guy says, discrepancies can creep into an account in a stressful situation. But how can there possibly be confusion about whether the suspect was A, wielding a knife, B, unarmed, C, lunging with a samurai sword, or D, overturning a table and then somehow acquiring a metal pole, or in fact, was it a broomstick? We are supposed to believe that multiple law enforcement personnel went to a man's apartment, confirmed via his own confession that he participated in a triple murder with an alleged terrorist, and still what? left him armed, or left him within reach of a samurai sword, or left him in reach of a metal pole, or were unable to subdue him when there were more of them, although the number keeps changing, than him. At best, the Atlantic writer says, an incompetently handled suspect was given access to a weapon so dangerous it justified using deadly force in response. Perhaps that's what happened. Or perhaps it will turn out that he was simply wrongfully killed. Now, I don't know. You have to have an independent investigation. You cannot have the FBI investigating this quite clearly. And here is the amazing thing, it seems to me. How there is no possible good explanation why this guy should be dead. I can't get my head around any reasonable explanation. Okay, and I've got to say something about this story before we run out of time. I don't know if you've been aware of it. There is a woman at a hospital in Mexico. She's 22 years old. She's the mother of a young child. She is pregnant. She is ill. She has lupus. And she has a number of complications in her birth. She is in her 26th week. She has been seeking an abortion. She has been told that she could well die if they attempt childbirth. And her fetus has a severe birth defect in which parts of the brain and skull are missing. The child has no chance of surviving after birth. Doctors who have seen her says she urgently needs an abortion to protect her health. The child is a goner no matter what. For some reason, they couldn't proceed in Mexico because she's a resident of El Salvador. El Salvador is absolutely the most anti-abortion country in the world, apparently. And she was waiting for the Supreme Court of El Salvador to decide, and they have. 4-1 decision saying that the rights of the mother cannot be privileged over those of the fetus. In other words, they said she's got to go ahead and have this baby, which will not survive. And now she might well not survive. And as I said, she has another child who will then be without a mother. That the Supreme Court of any country could put the right of a fetus, let alone a defective fetus, over the life of a living mother with another child to care for is beyond comprehension. 4-1. The rights of the mother cannot be privileged over those of the fetus. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of anti-abortion types in this country that would absolutely herald that decision beyond belief. There's a word that applies to this. It's called misogyny, hatred, and I would argue fear of women. Well, sorry this has been such a bummer, but my God, we use as fodder the news of the day. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the news of the day. And I am sorry, but I actually bear no responsibility for it. Or yes, I do. As I said, we're all culpable in many of these stories, especially the education of our children, because we don't give a rat's you-know-what, patoot-y. All right, I just want to say this before we leave. Go Pirates! And I want to say this, too. Go Penguins! And I want to say one more thing. Despite the fact that I haven't been feeling well, have you noticed I'm not clearing my throat, that my voice is okay? And you know why that is? I finally got to the right doctor about all my allergy stuff. And I want to thank him. My God, I can't believe. Why didn't I find him? I've been snurfling and snurgling around for the last 10, 15 years. So I think I'll be in good voice for a long time to come now. Have a great weekend.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.